Hey everyone, welcome back to another explainer. Today we're diving headfirst into a 1,000-year-old masterpiece, and we're actually going to kick things off with a dramatic story that, honestly, it reads exactly like a modern psychological thriller. So picture this. What if intense jealousy could literally leave your body and physically harm someone, right? It sounds crazy, but let's look at this terrifying scenario from a historic Japanese celebration. It actually results in the creation of a deadly living spirit, or ikiryo. Imagine feeling a negative emotion so powerfully that it literally takes on a life of its own. Section 1. The Festival Ghost Tragedy. Okay, so our story begins at the magnificent Aoi Festival in Kyoto. This is an event that's meant to be this joyous, perfectly elegant celebration for high society nobility. Now, during this event, we meet Lady Rokujo. She's a deeply proud, highly talented noblewoman, and she actually goes into disguise in this ox carriage just to catch a quick glimpse of her lover. But the streets are totally packed, and in what's essentially an ancient, completely brutal parking dispute, her carriage gets violently shoved aside and damaged by the servants of her lover's official wife. And man, this is where the story takes a super dark turn. This very public humiliation, it completely shatters Lady Rokujo's pride. Her inescapable jealousy and pain are just so intense that they literally manifest as a living ghost. This spirit literally leaves her awake body to go torment and ultimately kill the official wife. It's really the ultimate, terrifying collision of extreme beauty and absolute devastation. Section 2. Understanding the Tale of Genji. Now, what's really fascinating about that whole ghost story we just talked about is that it's actually the most famous scene from what is widely considered the world's very first psychological novel, The Tale of Genji. It was written over a millennia ago by the brilliant female author Murasaki Shikibu, and it acts as this incredible encyclopedic window into the intricate, highly aesthetic world of the Heian court nobility. We're talking a timeline that spans over 70 years, 54 chapters, and over 400 characters, all tracking the epic rise and eventual spiritual disillusionment of the shining prince, Hikaru Genji. And just to give you an idea of how emotionally rich and subtle this society really was, the text contains nearly 800 waka poems. I mean, back then, you couldn't just blurt out how you felt or, send a quick text message. You had to weave your love, your political ambitions, and your profound sorrow into these perfectly structured works of poetry. It's pretty amazing. Section 3. What is mono no aware? So to truly understand why the author would drop a dark ghost story right in the middle of a beautiful festival, we have to zoom out a bit. We need to define the core philosophy driving this entire book, mono no aware. It was coined by a later Edo period scholar, and the concept perfectly captures the sting of fate, when extreme beauty and inevitable destruction are experienced in the exact same moment. It's way, way deeper than just looking at something and saying, oh, hey, that's pretty. Notice how this philosophy kind of builds in 3 distinct steps. First, you perceive the object, like you notice a flower has bloomed. Second, you feel the basic emotion, right? You think, wow, that flower is incredibly beautiful. But that third step, that's where the magic is. Deep resonance. You realize that the flower is eventually going to die, and that creates this beautiful, stinging sadness. You're actually achieving a supreme empathetic resonance with the destiny of the universe. And honestly, this is exactly why Japanese culture heavily favors the brief, tragic bloom of cherry blossoms, or even the sudden burst of fireworks in the night sky, over, say, more resilient flowers like plum blossoms. Because sure, the plum blossom lasts much longer, but the swift, inevitable end of the cherry blossom, that is exactly what elevates its beauty to its absolute peak. Section 4. Red Chamber versus the Tale of Genji. Now let's broaden our perspective here with a really fascinating cross-cultural comparison. The Chinese literary masterpiece Dream of the Red Chamber actually shares this grand theme of ultimate impermanence with Genji. Both follow aristocratic men who revere women amid a fading world. But their trajectories are totally different. Red Chamber represents this grand external collapse of oppressive social systems. It's kind of like watching a giant mansion physically crumble to the ground. The Tale of Genji, on the other hand, is a deeply private, internal exploration of the human soul. You can actually see this most clearly when you look at the destiny of the women in these stories. In Genji, brilliant women, like Murasaki no Aoi, generally do not die from the cruelty of an oppressive external system. Instead, when they recognize that pain of mono no aware,
They actively choose the path of the monastery. They choose to become nuns so they can gracefully accept the transience of the world and ultimately find true inner peace.
And you know what? This doesn't just apply to the women either. Even Genji himself, after achieving absolute political and romantic supremacy, which is essentially reaching the absolute peak of human existence, he falls into this immense, hollow loneliness when his true love dies. He realizes that absolutely none of his worldly power can stop time. So he ultimately vanishes entirely from the text, retreating into spiritual seclusion.
Section 5. Moving versus static festivals. Okay, so we can actually see this profound philosophical difference anchored in the real world just by looking at how different cultures celebrate their festivals today. Visually, a Taiwanese Mazu palanquin and the palanquin at the Japanese Aoi festival look almost identical. They're basically both mobile shrines for divine power. But if you watch them in motion, they possess an entirely opposite cultural logic. While Taiwanese festivals, and actually a lot of Japanese folk festivals too, violently shake the palanquin to dynamically wake the gods, show miracles, and generate this loud, warm energy, the aristocratic Aoi festival demands extreme, slow stillness. Remember that Heian nobility we discussed earlier? For them, elegance is quiet. Shaking the carriage wouldn't just be wrong, it would be a massive sign of disrespect.
And this supreme quietness, it reveals something really beautiful. Mono no Aware is actually an incredibly tender worldview. It isn't about, throwing your hands up in cynical despair or raging against the dying of the light. Not at all. It is about choosing to cherish the fragile beauty of life because you know it won't last. It offers a gentle, truly empathetic acceptance of our reality. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want you to really reflect on that for a second. When was the last time you felt a deep connection to a fleeting, beautiful moment in your own life? Maybe it was a sunset, a perfect conversation with a friend, or just a blooming flower. How might applying this gentle aesthetic of Mono no Aware change the way you appreciate the temporary, fragile things around you today? Let that sit with you. Thanks so much for exploring with us, and we'll see you next time.